Senator Smith.
Very much, Mr Deputy President. In these final 2 weeks of Parliament, the matter that will be top of mind for many senators will be discussions, the debate and the resolution of the Labor government's new industrial relations platform. West Australians are confused. The government, it's fair to say, enjoyed strong electoral support in Western Australia. It won the seat of Pearce, it won the seat of Hasluck, it won a Senate spot. So West Australians can't understand why is it now that this Labor government has decided so quickly, and I think today marks the 6-month anniversary of the election of the government. West Australians can't understand why this new Labor government is now turning its back on West Australians, and importantly, turning its back on what is a critical part of the West Australian economy, indeed the most critical part of Australia's prosperity, and that is the mining and resources sector. There are 6 words that West Australians should not forget. It's not our policy, said Jim Chalmers. Jim Chalmers said before the election that wholesale industrial relations reform was not the policy of the government. Now, after the election, Jim Chalmers and the Prime Minister and Labor senators are saying it is the central piece of their so-called economic plan to improve wages in Australia. It's not our policy, said Jim Chalmers for everybody to hear, and just 6 months later we are now in the Senate chamber and it is the centrepiece of the last 2 weeks of this parliamentary sitting period. So let's just be very, very clear about why this is so central, why it is important for coalition senators like myself and Senator Cardell and others to stand up and argue against this industrial relations plan, which will damage the mining and resources sector in Western Australia and indeed across the whole country. Let's be clear about this. The mining and resources sector earns for this whole country $43 billion of export revenue. Secondly, it employs over 277,000 people. And, importantly for the government, which makes it more surprising that it will be turning its back on the mining and resources sector, is that it generates just over $43 billion in tax revenue for Australian governments. So West Australians have a right to be very, very distrustful so early on in the term of this government. Why is it, having enjoyed such electoral success in Western Australia 6 months ago, they are now in the final 2 weeks of this parliament deciding to turn their back on such a significant, if not the most significant industry in Western Australia and such an important industry across our whole country? The problem with Labor is that you can't believe what they say. You can't believe what they say. Coalition senators on this side of the Senate are surprised that so early in the term of this new government, their mistruths, their lack of honesty, their ability to wholesale change policy commitments given prior to the election are now there for the whole community to see. And West Australians have seen it with great clarity. These industrial relations reforms will damage the mining and resources sector. The sector itself says 33,000 jobs are at risk as a result of the multi-employer bargaining changes, in addition to new taxing proposals that are proposed by the government. We know, the industry tells us, that this will imperil $77 billion worth of projects, 140 projects subject to pre-final investment decisions will now be at risk as a result of new taxes and these industrial relations reform. Labor has betrayed West Australian voters.
Senator Smith.
Thank you, Deputy President.